Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me in another video. So I wanted to talk about something different today, but being in the world of handbags, the world of handbag news, I've had a few people message me about this story, so we're going to talk about it today. I'm going to be quoting articles from Reuters, Fashion Network, and NSS. I'll leave the articles down below if you want to read further into them, but the story is Valentino Bags Lab faces judicial oversight amid labor violations probe. This article states how a Milan court has placed Valentino Bags Lab SRL, maker of handbags and travel accessories for Italian fashion house Valentino SPA, under judicial administration following allegations that the company failed to monitor its suppliers. These suppliers reportedly subcontracted production to Chinese-owned workshops accused of exploiting workers and violating Italian labor laws. So of course we've talked about the story with Dior and Armani. This was a major deal, I think, especially with Dior, a very beloved luxury brand, very loved for their handbags. Dior being one of the biggest luxury brands in the world. It was a major deal. And it's one of these brands that I think has always had a very elevated image in terms of how these bags are made, the craftsmanship behind these bags. At LVMH, it was like one of their crown jewels, right? But it was revealed that at these third-party factories, these workers were exploited. Safety measures on machines were removed to speed up production. These factories were running at all hours of the night. There was video footage of the conditions in these factories. And I think at this point, it really turned off a lot of customers. Of course, we have seen LVMH has had a dip in the luxury handbags and fashion sectors. We've talked about that. Of course, this is an overall theme in luxury fashion. Other brands across the board are experiencing this, but it's interesting that the brands that are doing well are the brands that are more transparent in terms of how their products are produced. But the overall interest in luxury bags and the luxury sector in general is waning. Not everywhere, but we can look at the numbers, which we've talked about. I can look on my YouTube For You page. I'm sure there's another influencer saying they're no longer buying luxury bags. This is a common theme. There is this overall sentiment expressed by many that these items don't feel as luxurious as they used to be. And I think also part of it is the prices don't necessarily match the quality and the craftsmanship of these bags. So this has been an ongoing story, but here's another instance. A beloved luxury brand by many has exploited workers in their supply chain. And according to the report, the court stated the company, quote, culpably failed to oversee its subcontractors in pursuit of higher profit margins. The report mentions how between March and December 2024, law enforcement found 7 Chinese-run workshops around Milan where workers slept on site, quote, kept available for round-the-clock production, including public holidays. Power usage data showed continuous day-night cycles, and operators had allegedly removed safety devices from machinery to boost output. The article also reveals that the suppliers for Valentino Bags Lab produced 4,000 bags per month, and it cost them between 35 to 75 euros to make. A lot of these bags, according to the report, were later sold for 1,900 to 2,200 euros. And it's always so glaring to me about these stories with these brands is they choose to present a very different image of how they make their bags. I think of Dior has their Savoir Faire line. Valentino has a similar video series showcasing how they make their bags with their Mastery Tales series. Beautifully shot campaigns showcasing how these bags are made in these beautiful, pristine factories. According to these reports, it's not as it seems. Of course, this is nothing new. There have been several reports about labor exploitation. There have been several articles posted from several news outlets over the years, from the New York Times to Reuters. But I think what's very interesting now is there is this whole discussion, this issue around sweatshops, as well as this made in Italy versus made in China discussion as it relates to the trade war. Right now, it seems to be there's a pause, but I think this definitely adds another layer to the story. But there has been a lot of reporting already on exploited workers in these factories in Italy for years. Personally, Valentino, while it's not a brand I have shopped at from a while, I did buy a Valentino spike bag way back. Somewhere in the back of my closet, I still have a pair of rock studs, but at one point I would say it was a brand I really did enjoy. Stories like this, of course, really taint the brand. I think so much of the appeal with a brand like Valentino, I think this perception that it's, you know, a beautiful Italian brand and there's a lot of romance and there's this perception that these things are beautifully made. Now, this is not to say that everything is made like this. This is just specifically a subcontractor that makes the bags, but it does, I think, hurt the reputation of this brand. I think there's like always at least this hope that these products were made by workers that were dignified, well-trained, and compensated well. But according to the NSS magazine, the owners of the third-party companies were reported for labor exploitation, and the companies were fined more than 32,000 euros in total. So they also state it appears that Valentino's Bag Lab is not under formal criminal investigation, but the Italian court has acknowledged negligent responsibility for failing to adequately oversee its suppliers, despite being aware or reasonably expected to be aware of the risks associated with certain production dynamics. So while Valentino Bags Lab isn't directly being fined the way these third-party subcontractors are, I think a story like this at least does impact the consumer perception of the brand, especially right now. Maybe it's for a brief moment, we'll see. Right now, there's this general decline in interest around luxury. You can look at the financials of many of these brands as we already have. Valentino last month did report a dip in their sales for 2024. Of course, in 2024 though, was a unique year for Valentino in that Pier Paolo Piccioli, who was the former creative director, left early 2024. Alessandro Michele then joined, and it was just this transitional period. But he is a star designer, and I think he brings a lot of creativity to a brand and a lot of excitement and buzz, and his shows are always something that people talk about. But I also think for a brand to be luxury and charge these prices, right? There needs to be a base level of high quality craftsmanship and I think a pride in the work put into these pieces, a pride in their artisans. Like, I remember there was one show how Pier Paolo Piccioli a few seasons ago, he brought his design team out doing his final bow for a show. I thought that was like a symbolic act showing that this is a team effort. But I think that sentiment needs to be expressed at all levels at these luxury brands. There's a lot of people that work behind the scenes to create the fashion that we see. It's also great to see that kind of attitude extended to all levels of production. So yeah, that's my video for today. Thank you so much for joining me in another one, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!